Welcome to another Boba Joe episode, a very foggy, mysterious episode.
Very, very foggy. Not quite misty, but quite foggy.
You're talking about my brain again, aren't you?
There's a fog bank out there. Hope everybody's keeping well. Hope you're ready for some more John Carpenter love today.
Yes. JC month continues. 2 down, 2 to go. Well, once this one's down, it's two more to go. You get proper fog there in Ireland, like real, like fog.
We do get proper fog. We don't get the type of
you got
fog.
hills, you got cold. That's like the big major two ingredients.
We don't get the type of fog that like rolls in under your door and through the gaps in your windows and then manifests itself into like a pirate ghost. We don't get that type of fog.
Have you got any stolen Spanish gold melted down anywhere in your house? Just to be sure. Just check. Be safe.
I hope I do have some melted down Spanish gold, stolen or otherwise, in my house.
Yeah, you could buy some Ninja Turtles toys with that gold, man.
Without getting too far ahead of ourselves into this movie, anytime I see that big gold cross, I'm always like, wow, that must be worth a lot of money if that's real gold.
Yeah, I like when the bloke, I mean, obviously it's a prop, but when the bloke holds it in the film, he's like, he really sells it. Like, oh, it's heavy because gold is, heavy metal.
Oh, yeah.
Well, nice phone acting in this film, of course. It's old Adrian Barber.
Yeah, Selena Kyle herself.
Yeah, I also forgot that she was done the voice of the Catwoman. So we're getting to that. I got a talk coming up with Joneses sometime next few weeks, and we are actually doing a Catwoman specific episode, like the one about the Red Claw. Very appropriate here. I got red.
Yeah.
Little Billy.
Little Billy.
Billy.
You know, it's great.
Huey or Louie, whatever his name is.
This movie is heavy on the phone acting, would you say? Like everybody, it feels like everybody's on a phone.
Kind of double, triple. You've got all the good quality these vintage phones. Plus, we've got a radio station, so we've got microphones, we've got armatures, audio equipment, and telephones. It's like the whole trifecta of fun stuff. But yeah, old father might have had a few too many pints down at the tavern. Don't know if we
Father Malone. Yeah, he's fond of the drink, I think, Father Malone.
Yeah, a bit of a drink. Who can say how many he's had in this film? We don't know. He's seeing fog, he's seeing ghosts, he's seeing all sorts of things.
Knocking them back, even though they look like terrible pints, fucking heads. Like,
yeah, that was just a crappy graphic that was in the thing.
Yeah, Father Malone's head is feeling a bit foggy.
Yeah, the film kicks off with a bit of a kids getting told a ghost story, and apparently this was added on later on. The first cut of the film didn't have this, and also didn't have all the ending. I was reading the production sort of notes that when John Carpenter did this first cut of the film, he looked at it and went, by his own admission, it was kind of incomprehensible, and some of the film didn't make a lot of sense. So you had to film more to fill in gaps and plot holes and make it make sense, so an audience could actually understand it. So this is one of the scenes they added in,
and it was a good scene to add in because it's a great opening. Very spooky opening to the movie. We get the old Edgar Allan Poe quote up on screen at the beginning as well. But in what you're saying, I'd heard similar. I think when I had listened to the commentary on the DVD, yeah, they pretty much had to go back and recut the film essentially, and
recut. Something like 1/3 of the total film was added in after the fact, which is quite a bit.
And the film itself, I think, even to get where we were at the point of getting it made, like when Halloween came out, it wasn't an immediate hit in like its opening couple of weeks. It kind of got poor reviews and it wasn't forecast to do very well. But then shortly after its release, more reviews started to come out. The film started to gain a bit of traction, and then all of a sudden it became like a monster hit for a horror movie. So they were kind of anxious to give John Carpenter another opportunity to do a horror movie.
Apparently production lot or backers or whoever, when they did the Fog, it was like a 2-film deal. So it was this and Escape from New York was like the two in one combo deal.
That's a nice deal to get.
Yeah.
I'm definitely fond of both of those movies. So, but yeah, a nice intro here of you know, the old fisherman sitting with the kids and telling them ghost stories. And of course, we get the classic after the title of the movie shows up. We get that classic John Carpenter font.
Yeah, I love this like
Translated
plain
into One
font. So
Love.
hang on, we'll jump back to our little prim image. There we go. So even that is it's just like the great thing is it's like the most standard font you can grab in a thing, so it's real easy to replicate and chuck it in things.
Yeah,
I'm very happy, but I love that it becomes known as like, oh, that's that John Carpenter font. But you know, as was talked about on other ones like other John Carpenter films, including last year when we covered some stuff, it was all about like low budget stuff and what you can use. That's basically like kind of stock standard stuff that he became known for.
yeah, we got a nice kind of overview of the town of San Antonio here. We see the streets at night, all very quiet and
Very Halloweeny.
peaceful, very Halloweeny. Totally getting the Halloween vibes right off the bat.
Mm. You can really tell this film comes between Halloween and Escape from New York because we've got like small town. Well, we've got Jamie Lee Curtis, but then we've got like just a lot of dark shots and streets and stuff like we'll see in Escape from New York, and that is, you know, the lighting in that.
See, we've got mother and daughter in the same movie here, Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh appearing
Yeah, I
together.
didn't remember that. It's been about 15 years since I watched this film, and I just watched it again today. But I can also, when I was building the slides, visually I saw all the frames as I was running it through the video thing, but I was doing that without sound while I'm listening to music, you know. But yeah, I've been looking up the cast, and I totally forgot Jamie Lee Curtis was even in this because it's been so long. I only remembered Adrian Barbeau. There was the priest guy, and I remember there was a bunch of ghost pirates, and then townspeople, and the guy on the boat who's kind of like, you know, investigating or whatever. That was all I could really remember of the cast.
Yeah,
This
we've
guy,
got
the guy
sorry,
in the
go ahead.
start, is it just an actor that looks like John Carpenter, or is it actually him in that thing?
It looks so much like John Carpenter. It's freaky how much that
It's
guy
just got the
looks like
same. I
John
guess it's of
Carpenter.
that era, like there's like 70s, or like you can look at like bands from that era, and a lot of them got that same hair and mustache.
There's a few kind of John Carpenter regulars showing up in this, and even
Yeah,
just
quite a few in this one.
a trio jumping over from Halloween, because we've got Jamie Lee, of course, who was Laurie Strode, and her mate from Halloween is also in this. The girl who played, I think was her name Alice maybe, or Annie, or Nancy Loomis, I think is the actress's name. And then of course you've got Dan the weatherman in this movie. He's actually the cop from Halloween. He's like the town
Yeah,
sheriff or whatever. So we have a few kind of recognizable faces coming over from the Halloween movie.
and it's a very minimal score in this one. I mean, it's atmospheric like most John Carpenter ones, but even by his usual films, it's very minimal. There's bits of soft music and synth here and there, but it's all very eerie and appropriate. And like this, while it's shot as a film and it's got looks as good as any film visually, it feels like a extended episode of like say a Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt. You know, it's got that kind of low key sort of thing to it. And
A lot of people in this town work late at night, you know, because we've got this handyman here. He's doing the jobs for the priest here. It's like getting like just after midnight or coming up to midnight. He's still working, and we see Father Malone. He's sitting at his table, knocking back the wine. Um, Seems to have a fondness for it. And the dude who looks like John Carpenter, the handyman, he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna head on home now, Father." And he's like, "Can I get paid?" And Father Malone kind of brushes him off and tells him, "Oh, just show up at 2 o'clock tomorrow." So yeah, he's a fondness for the booze, and possibly he's possibly one of these guys who dodges paying his bills as well, and possibly relies on the goodwill of the fact that he's the local priest to get away with this type of stuff. But just as the handyman leaves and Father Malone kind of locks the door behind him, he hears a noise, and next thing, like a brick flies out of the wall and just lands right on his desk.
Yeah, and he just stood up. If he'd been sitting there, it might have hit him in the head because it fell like right there.
Yeah, and this is like I say a brick, I mean like a heavy stone from a wall. Like it's a serious,
like bloody heavy. Actually, this feels like
mass.
One of those bits in Final Destination where a character accidentally lives who possibly would have died, and then you know that something's gonna catch up with them.
And funnily enough, you did mention if he had been sitting there, I think the reason he got up is because he noticed that the handyman had left his radio behind, so he went to pick it up, and then that's how he narrowly missed getting whacked by the big chunk of stone. The big chunk of stone, which by the way reveals a hole in the wall where there's this diary hidden, which we'll get into later. But yeah, our initial kind of opening moments here. Here's another familiar John Carpenter name, Tom Atkins. See him show up in a few John Carpenter and John Carpenter adjacent movies throughout the years.
Nancy Loomis too. There's a few.
Nancy Loomis. Nancy Loomis, which isn't actually her real name. I can't remember what her real name is, but it's Nancy Loomis was like a stage name for that actress.
I assume by the sound of it sounds like a fake name.
Yeah. I think this guy here, I was actually saying this to my wife the other night when we were watching this. So we see these shots of the town at night. There's nobody around. But then we see that there's this guy working late in like a grocery store.
Yeah.
And he's walking the corridor or like walking the aisles, and he's like sweeping up and cleaning up. And then the fucker stops in the middle of an aisle and he takes a bottle of orange juice, opens it, like takes the orange juice off the shelf, opens it, drinks from it, puts the lid back, and puts the orange juice back on the shelf that they're selling in the store. What an absolute scumbag. That's how diseases are spread, boys and girls. Like that's a totally douche thing to do if you work in a place like that.
Yeah, whenever I hear the name Loomis, I always just think of Halloween straight away. It's like
yeah, Dr. Loomis, yeah. It's
and then
funny,
you got also in Scream, you got like Billy Loomis, who's like obviously named after these old films.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got lots of horror connotations, that name. But yeah,
good use of audio in this too. You get the radio, the phone calls, and Adrian Barbeau's in an actual like radio lighthouse outpost thing. But then also we get lots of scenes with radios in the background and playing bits of sound or her voice coming through. Good use of like audio.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of there's a nice ambient sound to this movie.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at, like ambient.
And even here at the beginning, all these kind of shots where we're going through the town and going through the different buildings and the grocery store and the like, it's all very silent and still. You can kind of hear like the hum of machines and the hum of refrigerators and stuff. But once that clock gets past midnight, all of a sudden, lots of weird stuff starts to happen. And like the guy in the grocery store starts to notice that like the bottles on the shelves are shaking and a few of them are smashing. All the car alarms start going off. All the lights in the cars start turning on.
Gas starts pumping itself.
Pumping itself.
There's I was watching QI this morning, and they were going on about fish or something, and they were going on about puffer fish. And then I was watching this, like, there's a big puffer fish hanging outside at the garage. Presume it's like dehydrated or whatever, so they're not alive anymore.
But yeah, it's a spooky happening here at the beginning of this movie, because this is all going on as we're still seeing the opening credits, like all this weird, wacky stuff that's happening. Like we're still
Yeah, it's
getting the
like
opening credits coming
supernatural
up.
kind of like Ghostbusters, but objects start just moving around or poltergeist. I almost forgot some of these bits because I remember like you got ghost pirates or whatever because I mean they're on the movie poster, so spoiler alert there. Or if you read the movie back in the day, you'd see stuff on the covers and that, so you got some idea. But I forgot how much supernatural, well, you call it psychokinetic energy or whatever, like think objects just moving around. How much of that was going on before we get to the other stuff?
Yeah, because we even see here on the bottom panels, Nancy Loomis's character, she's awoken from her sleep because she hears all these car alarms and different things
Yeah,
happening, and her armchair, her heavy armchair by itself moves across the floor.
yeah, that's straight out of
Now,
poltergeist. The old chair sliding
oh,
across the ground.
who just
Yeah.
and she just kind of looks at it like, oh, that was strange, as
Yeah.
if you wouldn't be,
That's
running out
ordinary.
of your house.
Feel like I might
And
be
I know,
leaving now. Things are flying around. Even if I'm not worried, maybe those objects might hurt me or hit me. I should probably just get another room.
and I know we call them, ghost pirates or whatever. I know they're not
Yeah.
technically pirates; they're actually.
Also, like they're kind of ghost zombie pirates, I guess.
I'm just trying to think. What's the They were from a leper colony, wasn't that the deal? They're a
Yeah, that's
leper
what. Yeah, I was
colony, and
reading because they
yeah,
only briefly cover it in the film, but they say there were a ship that was meant to be settling in a certain spot, and the townspeople didn't want them to be there, basically.
yeah, they were afraid of catching leprosy from these
Yeah,
lepers,
as we
essentially.
when we get to the scene come up where the father gets into the journal, that's kind of like the setup where we find out what the backstory of the town.
We see the dream team name here in the credits as well, alongside John
Yeah,
Carpenter. You have Deborah Hill, who's always on board, or who's often on board for a lot of his
yeah,
movies. Here's another thing you don't see too often these days: somebody hitchhiking.
yeah. And then she's even saying to the guy, going, you're not a weirdo, are you?" It's like, yeah, I am. Just like, oh, good, because the other guy was boring. I hitchhiked with. I'm like, no, that's like psycho killer material. You don't want to have someone go, yes.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And like, I know it's something. It wasn't totally uncommon when I was growing up, but it was definitely
Yeah,
something that wouldn't have been as popular as it was back, say, in my dad's day, when it was quite,
yeah. I
often
think
you'd
I
see
did it about
people
twice in my
hitchhiking.
20s in the country, but not since.
Yeah, young Jamie Lee Curtis here, fresh off her fame from Halloween. Gonna be she's already kind of cementing her reputation as the scream queen here, because
Yeah,
she's done Halloween, she's gonna do this. I think like prom night is either around this time or pretty soon, afterwards or before it. So she's gotten the name out there, Jamie Lee, as the queen of the scream. And of course, she's picked up by Tom Atkins here. And as you mentioned, yeah, she asked him the question about him being weird, and then laughs it off when he says that he is. But yeah, nice wee intro to Jamie Lee. She's not playing that same type of dweeby, nerdy character she
no, she's
was in
not as a regular
Halloween.
person.
And in a world for Halloween 2, or maybe if you were just kind of to discount the events of the Halloween sequels, maybe this girl could have been Laurie Strode escaping Haddonfield, and
Uh,
I just want to get out of that town and escape what happened to me there.
yeah, she's
But
definitely more like contemporary here because obviously this film's several decades old. But when it come out, they're wearing like normal clothes of the day, and it just feels like contemporary of when it was released versus Halloween. Even for when it was released, feels like a real throwback to the previous sort of decade in the houses and the way they're dressed, and feel like it could have been Grease and Sandra Dee or something like that.
yeah, Laurie Strode, especially in Halloween, like she's all like, in her cardigans and knee socks and stuff, like
Yeah,
she's definitely a bit of a conservative, prudish look about her. not so though in the fog. Jamie Lee, she's looking great as always. And speaking of looking great, of course, you got radio presenter Stevie Wayne. She's on the night shift, and
I will
she's,
listen to her on the radio anytime.
oh yeah, 100%. And
She has a
listen
great
to that
voice too.
voice. She has a great voice. Yeah, great voice. She's like, I'll do my best to turn you on if you turn me on, and all this stuff. Like, you know,
I was reading some more of her other credits, like later ones, and other than like Batman animated, that's like 90s. There's a big long gap where there's not much, but she's done quite a few other video game credits, like post year 2000s, like little character roles in it.
I'm pretty sure, is she in Creepshow?
Yeah, she's in Creepshow.
Pretty sure she's in Creepshow in one of
Random
the
episodes of stuff
episodes.
in General Hospital, Star Trek. I'm not sure which one, DS9 or something in that era.
Of course, Stevie, she gets a call from Dan the Weatherman, whose full character name is actually Dan O'Bannon, which is,
Yes, yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, the whole pile
And
of there's about 7 or 8 characters in this that are all named, that are all references to other movies. Mostly science
so,
fiction horror movies.
so Dan, he has a bit of a flirty relationship with Stevie, and they have a little back and forth. He's trying to convince Stevie that he'd like her to go to dinner with him, and she's like, well, Dan, I don't really know you. You're just like a voice in the phone. And he's like, yeah, well, you're just a voice in the radio, so we'd be the perfect couple. And so you have a little bit of back and forth between them. And the the reason he's calling her anyway is just to let her know that he's got a weather alert, that there's big fog bank coming in, and just to put the alert out on the radio for any fisher boats out there. So Stevie, she radios it out that there's a fog bank sweeping in along the coastline, and we cut to the interior of a fishing boat, and there's 3 lads, 3 fishermen. They're obviously out late at night, having a few beers after doing their work for the day, and one of the dudes, he's looking out the window. I think this is actually the same dude who is, you know, that bum in They Live who ends up betraying the humans and joining with the
Yeah,
aliens. I think
yeah,
that's the same guy. He's another one of these John Carpenter regulars, but
yeah. It looks like.
he's looking out the window and he's like, "There's a fog bank out there," and we see this spooky fog rolling in over the water, which also seems to have kind of lights emanating from behind it. So 2 of the lads, they go up on deck to try and get a better look at what's going on, while another one of them goes down below to check the instruments and try and get a handle on what's going on. So when we cut back to the deck, we see our 2 fishermen looking up at what appears to be an old timey sailing ship.
Yeah, like a
You know,
Spanish
for,
galleon sort of ship.
yeah, yeah, one of those type of ships coming through the fog. It's like, whoa, what is this? What's going on
It's a
here?
true
And
nightmare. Pirates 5, Johnny Depp. He's going to get us.
but yeah, as they're kind of pondering like what's going on, some shadowy figures emerge on the deck, and they seem to be armed with swords and slash hooks, and they proceed to unalive our 2 unfortunate fishermen who are up on deck. And as all of this is going on, the guy who went below earlier to check the instruments, he's still there just fiddling around, and doesn't realize that as the door opens behind him, it's another one of these shadowy figures coming up behind him, and he turns around just in time, and he gets the old Michael Myers style grab and stab. The guy
Yeah,
lifts him up and he just goes, and it's a pretty
yeah, it's quite
nasty.
brutal.
It is pretty brutal, as we'll find out later on in the movie. The dude got both his eyes stabbed out, which is
It's
yeah,
quite
a
unfortunate.
pretty nasty death.
He
So
definitely didn't see that one coming.
so this is our first kind of taste, the flavor, the horror of the movie. What did you make of this whole kind of sequence?
I love it. It's a great sequence. Um, it looks like a proper film, but you get a sense it's like, it's one of Carpenter's more low key sort of films, but it feels like that's used in the best way. Like, say, watching Escape from New York or Night of the Living Dead. It's got more visual color and variety than that, but it's got that low budgetness that works really well. We're using shadow, we're using fog, we're hiding bits of detail, we're only making what we really need for the scene, and nothing's sort of wasted. So and all the atmosphere comes together so well with those little minimal bits of sound and foley and all that. So I really love it. I love the kind of the whole aesthetic and feel of it and ambience. And
Yeah, and it's a beautiful looking movie, as Carpenter films often are, even though they
the
are
color,
quite
like the
simply
colors and
shot.
everything, is really nice. Like all the lighting and the warm colors and glows in the dark. And
I'm just going to mute myself briefly
yeah.
while I eject my little cat friend out of the room here because he's complaining. Just one moment there, folks.
Yeah, no worries. I'll check out what's happening in the next scene here. So Adrian Barbeau is sitting away in the radio station lighthouse, and we know she sends a warning out about the fog, but the fog has strange properties where it's not just obscuring your vision. We've had these ghost pirates, and it's also um, very, very cold as well. Like the fog isn't just like normal mist, it's almost like freezing level the way it's coming and affected the whole ship and everything in there.
Yes, it's I think the guy remarked before he got, skewered basically, that the instruments were all showing really, really low temperatures and,
Yeah,
and
which
that.
which real fog doesn't do.
Yeah,
I mean, moisture will muck things up, but it's not like freezing cold. It couldn't be, or it wouldn't be fog. It would be something else.
I love all these shots of Stevie Wayne because she's doing two things you'll never see in movies again: holding one of those old phones and smoking a
Yeah,
cigarette at the same time.
smoking.
And of course, we see that Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee really hit it off. uh,
Oh,
from their little,
I was just noticing her shirt too. It's like Roddy Piper's shirt, and they
but it's like I'm just looking up. Yeah, so I shouldn't keep calling them by the acting name. So Tom
yeah.
Atkins, he's Nick Castle, and Jamie Lee
I
Curtis
usually
is
do. I usually go with
Elizabeth.
default actor names.
But yeah, so Nick and Elizabeth here, yeah, they've really hit it off. You know, that it really paid. Picking her up, it paid off picking her up. He gave her a ride, and then she gave him a ride. So all's right in the world there. So they're lying in bed and they're kind of having a wee chat, and she's showing him some of her art. She's like into like painting and drawing, I guess, and they're just chilling basically. And next thing, there's a knock on the door, a very ominous, slow knock.
Probably Amway or something. Don't answer it.
Of course, he does what anybody would do. He gets up, he goes to investigate, and just as he's about to open the door, the grandfather clock behind him, the glass pane on it just cracks. It like oh, actually, that's another thing. I totally forgot to mention. When Tom Atkins, when Nick picked up Jamie Lee first on the road, there was this weird thing where all the windows in his truck got smashed. It's the same type of phenomenon that's been going through the town where things are like breaking and smashing and stuff. So that happened to them as well when they're in the pickup truck, which might maybe explain they were having a bit of a weird night anyway. So maybe it wasn't that weird that they decided just to hop into the sack together as well. So anyway, now this is another spooky happening where the pane of glass is broken in the clock, and also we've got this ominous knocking at the door. But when he goes to open the door, there's nobody there, and yeah, we just kind of see the fog rolling away as it came in. So yeah, some more spookiness and freakiness that night. But the next day, we see little Billy, Jimmy, Timmy, whoever, the kid.
Here we do it, Louis.
He's out. He's he's running along on the beach with his fishing rod, and he comes across so he's looking in the rocks as the waves are kind of crashing against the rocks, and first of all he sees what appears to be a shiny gold coin. But then next thing, the waves kind of roll over the coin, and in its place there's a piece of wood.
I bet
With,
it was one of
where
those
you,
golden suns from the DuckTales pilot. I bet that's what it was.
oh man, yeah, a Spanish doubloon,
Yeah,
shiny,
gotta be.
shiny gold.
It's never
Yeah,
cursed. The Spanish gold is never cursed, especially if it's several hundred years old. There's never any curses or anything. It's perfectly safe. Pick it up, take it home.
he picks up the piece of driftwood, and he decides to take that home with him. Now, if I was that kid, I probably would have been waiting to see if I saw any more gold coins instead of picking up the manky
Yeah.
piece of wood. But
Get your
kids
metal
will be
detector, kid.
kids.
Like the wackos down the beach here, I always see walking up and down. Like, I don't know what they're looking for. It's just rubbish out there.
And so the kiddo runs home, and we see that he is actually the son of Stevie Wayne, the KAB radio host. So he runs into his mum, and he wakes her up, and he's like, "Mom, look at this awesome piece of shitty damp wood I found on the beach," essentially. Of course, he doesn't actually say that. He's all really excited because it's all like, "Oh, there was a gold coin, but then I found this piece of wood," and she's just waking up, and she's clearly like,
You
"Why
found
is
some
my
trash and you
child?
brought it home.
You
Congratulations.
you brought dirty wet wood into me in my bedroom and
I
woken
found
me
half
up,"
a tree at the beach last week that had come up in the storms and it had wedged, it had washed up and then wedged itself below the ground level. It was like nearly half a bloody tree that had broken off somewhere along the coast, like dead wood in it.
Bring it home.
No, it was too heavy. It's too heavy. I just make sure not to swim in it because when the tide comes right in, it pretty much covers it. So, like, don't crash into it if you're swimming around out there.
Yeah, so Stevie, she's woken up anyway, and she's kind of looking at this peculiar piece of driftwood that her son has brought home. And after that, we cut to the pier, and we see Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee. They're walking up to one of the guys on duty there, and Nick Castle. He asks him if his buddies, the three fishermen in the boat, have come in yet, and the dude informs him no, that they haven't come in. He hasn't seen them since yesterday, and this really worries Nick because he says that they never stay out all night without radioing in first, so he's a bit worried that something might have happened to them. He says even if they'd been out drinking all night, they still would have been able to make it back into the bay. So he's a little bit worried, and he opts to go get another boat to go out looking for them. And Jamie Lee, who's totally smitten with him at this point, is like, "Yeah, I'll come along with you, because why not? I only met you last night, but we've been through so much already. Let's do this."
And then we
And
see a
from
mum in the next scene walking past the
yes,
sign going about the town centennial.
yes, from Jamie Lee to Janet Lee now, and she's with Nancy Loomis. And yeah, so Nancy Loomis, so Janet Lee's character, she is like the mayor of Antonio Bay, and Nancy Loomis's character is kind of like her personal assistant. So they're trying to get everything ready for this big centennial celebration of the town's existence. So they're all running around trying to get things organized. There's going to be a reveal of a statue and a plaque, and there's going to be speeches from the mayor and the local sheriff, and they're also going to get our good drunken priest friend Father Malone to read some prayer out as well. So it's all hustle and bustle as we prepare for this event. We also find out that the mayor's husband is actually one of the three fishermen that were on the boat earlier that was attacked by the ghostly figures. So she mentions that her husband hasn't come home yet from last night, and she's a little bit worried about him. And Nancy Loomis's character is also talking about how the town seemed to go crazy last night at midnight with all the car alarms going off and things breaking and windows smashing and stuff. So there's definitely an eerie air about the place on the eve of
Yeah,
this
she's like, nothing happens for
celebration.
decades and everything goes crazy.
Yeah, and she's right. What a line. Nothing happens for 10 decades, to be precise, Miss Loomis. What do you
Yeah,
think?
we
I
got.
think this is a really lovely looking location we see here at the
Yeah, I
bottom.
was
When
just thinking like there's lots of good interiors and exteriors. It's probably one of the most ordinary is not the right word, but like apart from supernatural stuff, the most like ordinary slice of life country town sort of John Carpenter film compared to his other ones like bloody You're on Mars and Escape from New York, and we get to see like ordinary outdoors, cars, clothing. So it's like a regular non-horror film really with a really rich, beautiful color palette and lighting. But yeah, the location shoots are beautiful.
Yeah, really nice. I think it's somewhere along the like I think they went along the coast outside LA just looking for locations till they found a
Mm.
suitable place. But yeah, beautiful looking scenery, just really nice. And we got the we got to see her driving her nice little red Jeep, and she's decided to take the damp piece of
Driftwood.
driftwood that her son brought her. She's going to take that with her to work today for some reason. But yeah, just beautiful location here. Kind of reminds me of Ireland a little bit, I have to say. There's
Yeah,
definitely
it's got the
parts of here that
coast and the green and the hills.
those fences too reminiscent. But we the whole time as well while she driving to work. I guess they don't actually have like a daytime radio station. The radio station just plays repeating music and bumper ads because that's all that's kind of playing in the background. It's just like you're listening to KAB, blah 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 blah,
I'm
and
just
now
gonna
some
move
music.
Pedro. I'll be right back.
So yeah, we kind of have this kind of repeating kind of radio crackle in the background as Stevie makes her way to work. And work, by the way, is this lighthouse, which is where the radio station is based, which is a pretty cool spot. Lots of nice views for where we're based here. But we cut to the boat this Nick Castle has taken to go and search for the three missing fishermen, and he's just really
Ah,
concerned.
Passport.
And he's you know Jamie Lee, she can kind of tell this everything's not right, and she's trying to reassure him, but he's not kind of feeling it at all, and he's just getting really worried. And we see as well at the same time the mayor of the town is also beginning to become quite stressed over the fact that her husband still has not returned home, and she's waiting to hear word from the Coast Guard and anybody who's went out looking. And just as she's saying that, we cut back to the guys in the boat. They found the missing um fisher boat, but they can't seem to locate the three crewmen. And they also noticed that while the boat itself, the deck appears to be bone dry, but lots of items are like dripping in salt water and seaweed, which is really strange as well. They also take note of that. So
Yeah, some work at Davy Jones again.
yeah, some odd happenings here. And so we're kind of getting this kind of cuts back and forth between the guys searching and investigating the boat while Janet Lee and Nancy Loomis are driving out of town towards the church where Father Malone resides, so they can chat to him about tonight's ceremony. And we get this pretty ominous moment where they knock on the door, and the door just does that and opens by itself. That kind of the creaky Resident Evil door
Yeah,
opening.
the doors that never get any bloody grease.
And I always find this moment really funny. So they go into the church, and there are two of them. They're being really loud, and they're like, "Father Malone, Father Malone, hello." hello, Father Malone, and they can't find him, and they're splitting up to go looking for him, and then all of a sudden he just emerges from the shadows like out of
He
nowhere
pops
and
out of
just
the
stares
wall
them
like
down.
Michael fucking Myers. Like he literally just
Yeah,
comes out like he's gonna like grab them. Like it really makes you
like
jump.
were you just standing there the whole time, like freaking
He's
us
just in
out?
this
Like why
one
the hell
spot
did
that's
you say?
completely black, wearing a black outfit like Batman or Michael Myers that just pops out of nowhere.
So yeah, he appears like Batman, and he seems kind of shaken, and he has the diary that he's found earlier, and he's like, "Look, I have to tell you something." So he sits them down and he starts telling them what he read in the diary. So the diary apparently is written by like his great grandfather or his grandfather, and it basically confesses to the origins of Antonio Bay. And the story is that there was a person by the name of Blake who was inflicted with leprosy, and he lived in a leper colony with all the other lepers because that's where they lived back in the day. And he wanted to better himself and to better the lives of the people on the island colony. So he approached the kind of the township of Antonio Bay, which was really just a small little nowheresville at the time, 100 years ago, and he asked if he could relocate the leper colony to an area not far from the town. And the founders of the town, Blake included, did agree to this deal. But like upon further kind of deliberation and consideration, Blake decides that he's actually disgusted at the idea of having a leper colony so close to their little town. So him and five other people, they kind of hatch a conspiracy to basically sink the ship that the lepers are
Mm.
coming in on. But not only sink the ship, they're also going to steal the gold
Yeah, they have a
that's
fire instead
stored
of a
on the ship.
lighthouse, so they, crash the ship where they think it's gonna be safe.
Yes, and it's noted in the diary by Blake that an unearthly fog seems to help them in their endeavor of crashing the boat. Like, so apart from messing with the signals and misdirecting them to crash into the rocks, the fog itself also helps the situation because they can't see properly to begin with. So Blake and the ship of lepers were sank, and the gold was taken and used pretty much to invest in the town and turn the town into kind of a prosperous little port. So the history and the origins of the town are essentially shrouded in shame, due to the fact that this is how they kind
Yeah.
of funded
And
the
while
town
this
to
is a
begin with.
fictional movie, in the notes, like John Carpenter stuff for the commentaries, that there are some various events here and there in real life that he pulled some of these things from. Not exact, but a mix of different things.
So in conclusion, Father Malone says that this celebration tonight, you're essentially going to be honoring murderers.
Yeah, the murderers.
And he also remarks that it was just past midnight when the brick fell out of the wall and the book came out, or when he found the book. And then that's when Nancy Loomis remarks that it was around midnight last night where the whole town kind of went crazy with things falling apart and breaking and crazy noises and stuff. So we're definitely getting lots of signs that something big is about to go down. And we get an excellent moment here when we cut back to the interior of the fishing boat, and Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee, or Elizabeth and Nick if you prefer, they're sitting down, they're having a chat, and they're kind of speculating as to what could have possibly happened. Like, how is the boat mostly dry yet there seems to be like seaweed everywhere, and certain things are like rusted to the wall, and there's salt water in the cans of beer, and they really just don't understand what's going on. And Jamie Lee, she goes to kind of move, and just as she does, a corpse of the guy who got both his eyes stabbed out just flops down. He falls out
Yeah,
from a locker. It's a great jump scare. And of course, yeah, we got to see he's got like two holes where his eyes should be. So it's a pretty ghastly discovery for the two here on the boat, and we cut back to the lovely Stevie Wayne traveling to work at the KAB radio station. And as I remarked earlier, once again, beautiful scenery. I would probably be a little bit freaked out walking down those stairs, looking out at that
Yeah,
large open
I'd
body
be
of
like,
water.
there's some
That's just
umbrella
me.
shenanigans or something going on down there. Something like that.
Yeah, it's I'm a bit iffy with those just heights and looking into large open bodies of water. Probably wouldn't be my two
Yeah,
favorite
it's
things,
scary.
even though it
I
is
have been
beautiful.
around coastal walkways and that. They are scary.
And fair play to her, as my wife remarked the other night as well. Like, she's walking down these steps in heels in a very
Yeah,
blustery, windy environment. You
yeah.
can even see like the wind is really kind of shaking her from side to side
And
as
those rails
she
aren't very
makes
high.
her way down there. Yeah, and she's not holding on to them either. She's very brave.
Like when they build ones like this now, they tend to build higher rails, so when the wind does knock you over, don't go straight over the edge.
Yeah, you won't go straight over the edge, but you might just roll the whole way down the steps
Yeah,
instead.
yeah.
Better than falling to your death to the rocks below, though, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah, we see her radio station is in somewhat of an isolated location. It's essentially she's broadcasting from this lighthouse building. So as I remarked earlier, it's probably a pretty cool spot for the views and the scenery, but definitely somewhat isolated. I am or isolating, I imagine, having to work in a place like that. But we see, of course, as well, she has her piece of dirty driftwood in tow with her because yeah, I'm still I'm still not 100% sure really what her kind of rationale was for deciding to take this to work. Maybe she just thinks it will look cool in the radio station or in the radio studio to have this piece of wood. Oh, I should also note this when Father Malone was telling the story about how Blake and no, sorry, I believe Blake might have been one of the lepers, but basically how the townspeople had sunk the ship. He did mention that the name of the ship was the Elizabeth Dane. So the piece of writing that we can see inscribed in the driftwood actually does say Dane. So we can conclude, therefore, it is a piece of driftwood from that very same ship
Very
that was
flammable
sank
piece of wood.
100 years ago to this day.
It was a very flammable cat who wanted his dinner, was making a bit of noise. So he was already prepared the fridge. I'll just take it out and he's quiet again.
Yeah, look, the cats are our benefactors here on the show. They're the ones with the power and the money, so we do as they tell us.
Yeah, Pedro's my sponsor.
We see here as well Stevie, while she's letting she's kind of running through a few radio demo ad spots and stuff, and while this is going on, she has her back turned to the piece of wood, and we see that all of a sudden the wood, it starts to get wet by itself, like water just starts to
Yeah,
appear
like
on it,
oozing out of the wood.
and the water, it begins to drip down on the radio equipment, and all of a sudden a spooky voice starts coming through the radio and basically talking about vengeance and how six must die. We see six must die appears on the piece of wood, and then all of a sudden there's a big explosion and the wood catches fire, and Stevie is quick to go put it out. But when the fire is put out, we see that the wood has returned to its original form with just the word Dane inscribed. So the whole six must die thing has disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. So once
Yeah,
again, another
very
very
Ghostbusters
strange
kind of
and
scene.
spooky. Oh yeah, very Ghostbusters. Fair play to Stevie for being quick on the ball as well and putting out that fire.
Yeah, she's no helpless damsel.
Certainly not. Certainly not. And we'll see a bit of that later on.
Yeah, I like
So
that in John
yeah,
Carpenter films. Women are usually pretty can-do sort of people. They're not like, I mean, Halloween we get a lot of screaming, but she's not a helpless victim. She's someone who does stuff for herself. I don't. That's the kind of running thing you see in Carpenter.
Oh yeah, like yeah, Laurie Strode. She's in Halloween. She's definitely she's quick on the ball, especially when it comes like she
Mm,
stabbed Michael Myers with that sewing needle, and she gets him a few times where she's able to
yeah.
actually defend herself and keep herself alive. She's not just lying there waiting to be rescued. So we cut to the hospital or local medical facility, if you want to use a Vince McMahonism for no reason at all. And I have to say, I love the fact that like the doctor coroner guy is just dressed the exact same as Tom Atkins. Like they make no effort to
Yeah.
kind of
It's
dress him up like a
a
doctor.
lot of these like flannel home improvement kind of shirts or Roddy Piper flannel shirts in this movie.
It's like, could you not have just at least thrown a white coat or something on him just to sign say like, hey, I'm a
It's like,
doctor.
well,
But
actually, I'm a doctor and a carpenter. I was just working in this other room.
maybe that's what maybe that was just what makes it more real. Maybe he was off
Yeah.
duty, got called in when this body
Yeah.
was brought in. So um the dude, he asked to go speak to Nick out in the hallway to talk about what's happened, and they're having this conversation where the doctor's basically like, look, that body's been down in the water for at least a week. And Nick's like, no, there's no way. I'm telling you,
Mm.
I saw these guys yesterday. There's no way that body is, the way that you're telling me that it is.
Yeah, based on
And
like
as
the
this,
decomposition and the sea salty fullness of the body.
and as they're having this discussion, Elizabeth actually has been left in the room alone with the corpse essentially, and she's sitting with her back to it, but we see as she's sitting there that the sheets begin to move and the body begins to stir, and all of a sudden we see these kind of legs coming over the bed and start walking towards her, and she turns around just in time to almost be slashed with a scalpel
Yeah.
that's been wielded by this eyeless corpse, which falls on the ground and it marks the ground with the number 3.
Or it's an M and he's hanging out for McDonald's and he's really hungry.
Yes, get me a Big Mac. I'm starving.
I'm a reanimated corpse. I'm quite hungry.
Get me a fillet o' fish.
Yes, for sure.
So more creepy happenings here. This was a great kind of horror moment. I thought in the
Yeah.
movie, it's quite alarming and stressful.
You don't expect it to happen because so far we've seen kind of ghost pirates at a distance, but not up close. We've seen the fog. We've seen objects getting moved around, but now we've got a body that's been moved around by this like pirate energy or whatever because he just goes back to being dead a moment later.
Yeah. So the day is moving on and we're getting closer to nighttime here. The 3, by the way, is a reference to the fact that 3 people have already been killed by
Ah,
these ghostly leper people, and now there's 3 more remaining that that are still going to be on the hit list, because as it said earlier on the piece of wood, 6 must die. So 3 have died and 3 are remaining to be died.
yes, we'll find out who. Some more lovely scenery as the sun disappears, and we're going to be seeing more fog soon enough.
Yeah, because we're getting ready for the big celebration here. It's all about to kick off. The townsfolk are gathering, and we cut to the interior of the local pub, and the local sheriff and Tom Atkins, they're speaking with Janet Lee, and they're like, look, are you sure you want to go out and actually do your speech? We understand your husband is still missing, and obviously one of the guys on the boat with him is dead, so we can understand if you'd be totally like out of your mind with worry and not want to actually go ahead with this. But she's like, no, the show must go on. I'm the mayor of the town, and I will actually go out and do my speech. So he sets off, and as Jamie Lee and Tom Atkins or Elizabeth and Nick are in the bar, they're listening to the radio, and we hear Stevie Wayne giving the weather report, and she remarks about a fog bank coming in, and she also says something about, "Oh, stay safe out there, don't get lost in the fog." And for some reason, this prompts Nick to phone into the radio station and ask her what she meant about the fog, and she says like, "Well, look, from here it looks like there's this weird fog bank coming in, and like it's like glowing, and loads of weird things have been happening since last night, because last night it was also very foggy, and then that boat disappeared, and then strange things started to happen around town." So
And regular fog
lots
doesn't
of things.
glow. Light will shine through
Yes,
it or kind of reflect and refract, but it doesn't like glow from the middle of it. So we know it's weird.
yes. And I believe like, so they basically had a couple of different ways, I think, of doing the fog effects in this. So some of the fog effects are literal visual kind of like animation effects, like these big glowy bits that we
Yeah,
see over the water. But later on, when we'll see moments where the fog is like going down a street, or the fog is like coming into a building, that was actually done with people who had literal fogger machines
yeah.
pumping out
Yeah.
fog, while guys with like fans and stuff were like trying to like blow it towards and
You
like
can you
shine
can tell
lights through it.
the real the real fake fog, the man-made fog versus the overlay projection kind of one, because you can sometimes see it kind of the blue one kind of pops out of the background a bit. And apparently they did in the cinema the display of on the film release. I don't know if it did in the movie thing, but in the entrance to the cinema or cinema itself, they said they had some fog going at some of the when this film played. So,
That's pretty
when it
cool.
was released.
Some dry ice maybe creating a
Yeah,
bit of
probably something like
an
that, like the
atmosphere.
foyer and when you buy your ticket or whatever.
Yeah, just to reiterate again, so much so much on the phone bits in this movie. It's just fantastic.
I like it where it's dark here and you got that just the kind of disc lamp light, which is in the radio, and it's just lit so nice with like the red of the top and then the warm lighting, and that's such a good scene.
He looks great, I have to say. Stevie Wayne, Adrian Barbeau, just like an Escape from New York. He's she looks fantastic in that movie too.
Indeed.
So we cut here to Dan O'Bannon, good old Dan, the
Yeah,
weatherman,
you got some turtleneck cardigan acting here. That's some quality stuff.
and he's coming in for the night shift at the weather station, and the other guy clocks off, he leaves, and Dan, he does his usual phone in to KAB, and he's like, "Oh, hey, just to let you know, there's a big fog bank rolling in," and this kind of it scares Stevie a bit, who's already been getting freaked out by the strange happenings from the last day or so. So she puts out a warning on her radio for people to be mindful of the fog coming in. And
Yeah, the
while this
fog,
is going on,
the wind's
yeah, go
blowing
ahead.
in the opposite direction, but the fog's coming across anyway, which is impossible for normal fog.
Yes, yeah, like the wind is blowing east with fogs rolling in a westerly direction. It's all very, very odd. And as this conversation is going on to over the phone, we see that the fog has actually drifted and surrounded the weather station that Dan is at. And we hear that slow knock at the door, like we heard earlier on in the movie when we were in Nick Castle's house. And Dan, he advises Stevie that he's going to go check and see what the noise is. She's a bit freaked out and advises him maybe not to bother
Like,
and
don't
don't
do it.
bother opening the door. But he ignores her and he goes ahead and does it. And he's like, "Oh, I think it's just somebody playing a joke, but they're not going to be too happy
He's
when they
like
find
some
out I'm
drunk
actually here."
asshole.
So the knocking continues, and it should be noted this whole time that fog is literally like hissing in the windows, the gaps in the windows. Like, it's definitely something you wouldn't think was normal, I think.
Yeah, it's like the ghost
You know,
pirates live in the fog, and where it goes, they seem to materialize within it.
so he opens the door, and there's plenty of fog, but he can't actually see anybody there. So he turns to go back inside when all of a sudden he's grabbed by the neck, and the big slash hook comes in and gets him, and he's dragged out into the fog. So we get another grab and stab moments, and some good old slash hook use there to take out poor Dan the weatherman, a grisly end.
Catch you later,
So
Dan.
we're catch you later, Dan. We're up to the 4 now out of 6 people have been offed by the ghostly leper people. So Stevie, she's freaking out because she could hear all the sounds of death and struggle over the phone. So she gets on the radio and she sends out like an emergency bulletin asking if there's anybody driving in the area, um, just to beware of the fog and to stay away from the fog because there's something sinister and dangerous in the fog. And while all of this is going on, we see that Janet Leigh, that she is in fact giving her speech. Now we can see that she's giving it kind of somewhat morosely. She doesn't seem overly enthused to be, because she knows now. Well, there's two things on her mind. The most prominent thing on her mind, first of all, is that her husband is still missing. She doesn't know what's going on. But of course, there's also in the back of her mind the fact that she's just been informed hours ago that the town was in fact founded on murder and fraud, and the reason
Yeah,
that the
now
whole
we're
town
trying to
was
celebrate that.
financed, yeah, it was the town was founded on stolen leper gold, so she's not overly enthusiastic
At least it wasn't on any
about what's going
burial
on.
ground or something, because that's usually what happens in these movies.
Around the same time when this is going on, we see that the fog is rolling in towards a power station, and it actually rolls over the generators and it cuts the power to the entire town, which spooks the people somewhat. It also rolls over the telephone poles and disconnects them, so
Yeah,
nobody's able to.
this feels like in Stephen King's The Mist, like that part where it really comes right into the town.
Yeah, yeah, and it's things are really starting to heat up now. So obviously everybody who's at the centenary ceremony are a bit pissed off just because well, the power's gone out. We're all just standing out here in the cold and there's nothing much to do now. So they start sending people home, and once again, as all this going on, yeah, we can see the fog entering the kind of the generator room of the power plant and damaging all the machinery. It kind of gets sucked into one of the turbines, and we start seeing lots of explosions and stuff just as the lights in the town go out. Thankfully for Stevie, there is a gas fuel powered generator in the lighthouse, so she's able to like run downstairs and get that running so she can start broadcasting on the radio again. But yeah, it's all happening here at Antonio Bay. A night of celebration is slowly turning into a night of nightmares, as we'll see.
Yeah, it's like the town's celebrating, and now it's like I feel like we're like Adrienne Barbeau. I feel like with Jill in Resident Evil now, she's like the one who knows this horrible stuff's happening. I've got to do something or try and live and survive.
Yeah, she's got to make her last escape.
There's a lot of stairs and lighthouses. Definitely makes me think of like Resident Evil and Umbrella kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, getting those vibes. So obviously Stevie, she's in a panic because she can't call her house where her son is being babysat by old Mrs. Magoo or whatever her name is, and so she's frantically, she gets on the radio and she radios out. She's like, "Look, if there's anybody in the vicinity of," she gives the address of her house, "will you please go round and checking them?" Because she's afraid. She sees that the fog is rolling in, and she's really just freaking out about the whole thing. So we cut to the interior of her house and we see the little Billy. He's been babysat by the old woman, and she's getting a bit freaked out by all the fog surrounding the house. So she tells the little kid to go close all the windows and make sure all the doors are closed, and he goes and does that. But of course, we can see the fog is still like pissing in any little
Yeah.
gaps in that in the
Stop
door. And
setting fire to wood, Billy, and plain Nintendo, and go and batten down all the hatches.
so the old lady, she's like, "Look, Billy, maybe just go wait in your room." And as she says this, we hear the slow knock at the door. This slow knock at the door we've been hearing the whole movie. And Billy's
They're very
like, "I just
polite,
want
these
to
ghost
stay."
pirates, really.
Yeah, they always knock. They always knock before killing. Um, Billy's like, I want to see and stay and see who it is, because why would you? But she's like, no, go into the room and lock the door. The old lady definitely knows something's up, but he opens the door, and once again, just like with Dan, the weatherman, she can't really see anything except for the fog. And just as she turns to go back in, we see a hand come out of the darkness and snatch her, and she's pulled down onto the ground. And I think we actually see like 3 separate blades going into her. So she's obviously like getting like a multi stabbed here outside the door. So yeah, this poor old babysitter, she'll never babysit again because she's dead. And the little kid, he's locked himself in his room, but the ghostly apparition starts breaking through, and we see the slash hook breaking through the door. And the whole time this is going on, like we're cutting back to Stevie in the lighthouse, and she's frantically on the radios, like screaming for somebody to come and call round to the house. And Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee, they happen to be in the truck when they're hearing this radio broadcast, so they're able to swing by the house. And just as the door has been almost broken open by the ghostly leper pirate dude, thankfully Tom Atkins shows up just in time. He breaks open the bedroom window and is able to pull the child out. And he bundles him into the truck, and they're trying to get it moving, but the wheel gets stuck in a pothole, and Jamie Lee, she can't get it to reverse. And the whole time the ghostly zombie-ish figures with their swords and slash hooks are surrounding the truck. So we got a real tense moment where we think everybody's going to get got, but just at the last second they manage to give the truck the gas it needs to get out of the hole, and they're able to reverse out of it and go spinning down the road and escape for the moment. And it's a pretty tense deal. What did you think of this whole um kind of situation with the babysitter getting
Ah,
killed
it's
and the kid in the house?
great sequence, very very tense because all that fog's going absolutely everywhere, and the more of these ghost pirate dudes are just turning up all over the place, and I just love the fog as a visual thing. It just works so well on film and that, and I like real life fog too. Not driving, but walking in it. I don't know. I don't find it scary. I find it relaxing. I like it.
Yeah, it can be a weird thing, especially here. We can get a kind of a like a damp fog, so you can be out
Mm,
walking in it and not really notice it. But then when you get back in the house, you're actually soaked because all the little
yeah,
water particles have kind of clung to you.
yeah. We used to get where I grew up in Christchurch. We get fog all the time in winter. That's like the casual fog. But occasionally you get these rare days where it's like this super thick, like this movie fog, where it's literally you could hold your hand in front of your face and you can't even see it, and that's like wow, that's like super thick fog.
So Dan the weatherman, he was death number 4, and old lady babysitter, she's death number 5. So we got one death left to go
Yeah, before we get to our
here
final
tonight.
destination.
So the fog, it's been rolling in. It's pretty much covering the whole town. Um, as we mentioned earlier, everybody was advised to go home and leave the celebration. And this whole time, Stevie, she's on the radio and she's warning people like, "You look, don't go near this fog. There's something bad in this fog." So Nick, Liz, and the kid, they're driving along and they're listening to the updates of where the fog is moving. So they have to keep on like altering their course because they don't want to drive down the streets or drive down the roads they know the fog is going to be on. And at the same time, we see Janet Lee and Nancy Loomis, who are also driving, and they are also similarly trying to dodge the fog and not go down any streets or any roads that the fog is rolling in on. But slowly but surely, it's beginning to kind of cover the whole town. So Stevie on the radio, she advises anybody that can hear her that the only place that seems to be free of the fog at the moment is the church on the outskirts of town. So both groups of people decide to head towards the church, which of course is also where Father Malone resides. So our 2 cars make it there. So we've got the car with Nick, Liz and the kid, and then we got the other car with Janet Leigh and Nancy Loomis. So they both end up at the church, and they all run inside to try and escape the fog, and also to find Father Malone, who's cowering inside in an alcoholic stupor. And while this is going on, though, we see that the fog has also reached the lighthouse, the KAB lighthouse, and it's beginning to seep in. And once again, we hear the dreaded knock, and Stevie, she runs down to try and barricade the door to stop whatever from getting in, but it's not enough, and the fog continues to push its way through, and the ghostly ghosts continue to try and make their way into the lighthouse. So Stevie has to work out a way to escape while all this is going on. So we're basically getting now coming up to the finale of the movie. We're going to be getting a lot of
Yeah.
cutting between the location of the lighthouse and the location of the church while the whole kind of closing moments are happening. So in the church, Father Malone, he consults the diary, and in the diary it says, the way it's basically worded, it's something along the lines of, I hid the sins of our thievery in the temple of God, and the gold is hidden in the church, basically. So Father Malone, he breaks down a bit more of the wall where the original diary was found, and discovers that there's a large gold cross hidden in there. So all the gold, or at least a good chunk of the gold that was stolen from the sunken ship, was actually melted down and melted into this heavy gold cross. And as Johnny mentioned earlier at the beginning, like when Father Malone is trying to move this thing, he's literally having to like drag it, and like, because it's supposed to be solid gold, so it would weigh a ton. So he's trying to drag the gold out of there. We cut back to the lighthouse, and we see that Stevie, she's managed to get out onto the outside of the roof and like climb up a ladder to get herself up on top of the roof, but she's still being pursued by one of these ghouls with a slash hook, who's slowly making his way up the ladder and chasing her up onto the roof. So once again, we cut back to the church, which has been now surrounded by fog. All the forces of darkness are trying to break in and basically get to our heroes here. So they're like smashing in the windows and reaching their hands through. And as this is going on, like Nick and Liz and all the rest are frantically running from place to place, trying to like barricade windows and stop these forces from getting in. But as all this is going on, the Father Malone, he dragged the big gold cross out into the main section of the church, while the rest of the survivors barricade themselves into one of the back rooms. And as Father Malone is standing there in the church, all the Blake and the other ghostly apparitions of the dead lepers appear, and they're all armed with their swords and their slash hooks. And Blake, I'm sorry, Father Malone, he hands the golden cross towards Blake, and he's like, "Look, this is your gold that was stolen from you by my grandfather, and I am the ancestor. I'm the descendant of the guy who conspired to kind of off you and to rob you. So take me, essentially." So he puts the golden cross out in front of him and holds it out so Blake can take it. And Blake, he puts his hands on the gold, and as he's putting his hands on it, it begins to glow red, and all of the ghostly apparitions all of a sudden begin to glow red and slowly fade away. And we think that Father Malone is going to be taken with them, but at the last minute, or at the last second, I should say, Nick runs up behind them and kind of pulls them away from the cross. So the cross and the ghosts all disappear, and also the ghost, or the apparition that was coming after Stevie Wayne on top of the lighthouse, it also disappears. So it seems to be that everything is okay. Like we're led to believe that the night is over, even though they've only taken 5 of the 6 lives that they promised to take or that they said they were going to take. And yeah, we see this great shot here that Johnny's taken with that cross just glowing bright while Blake is hanging on to it, and him and Father Malone are entering into their little exchange here. So we think everything's going to be okay, basically. So the ghosts have disappeared. The fog seems to be rolling backwards out into the sea. You know, Stevie Wayne, she's there lying on top of the roof, recovering because she'd taken a stab to the shoulder in her efforts to escape earlier. So she's kind of lying there, all freaked out, but just generally glad to be alive. So we think everything's beginning to kind of wind up, and you know, Stevie, she gets back and the radio starts kind of summarizing the events of the night, and then we see that Janet Lee, that Nick Castle, Nancy Loomis, you know, Jamie Lee, the kid, they're all exiting the church to go home after a long night, essentially. And the movie
No more
ends
pints
with
for you,
Father
Father.
Malone. Father Malone, yeah, he's alone. He's left in the church and he's walking around and he's kind of talking to himself, and he's like, he asked himself the questions like, Blake, why didn't you take me? You know, it's like he's just talking to nobody. And then all of a sudden he hears a sound and he turns around and the red-eyed Blake is standing there. And the very last kind of moment of the film is just Blake swinging the sword back, and we get the kind of head chopping sound, and then we cut
Officially, he
to
was
credits.
decapitated, going by the novelization.
Yes, yes, decapitated in his own church. But yeah, that there we go. That's The Fog. Great
Brilliant
ending
film.
as well. Brilliant film, because you do
Yeah,
think that Father Malone is kind of, oh, they only killed 5, they didn't take 6, but no, they
yeah,
make sure they got their 6th guy.
got their blood money. They don't make it obvious in the film. There's kind of clues, but it's not explicit. But reading and production notes, there was a novelization based on the film, and in that officially the 6 that were killed are not random people. They're all descendants of the 6 who fucked over the people that are on the ship, who murdered them.
That makes sense. That makes
So they got
sense.
their comeuppance because we know the father is because he mentions about the diary, but the other ones we don't really know. We know they're connected to the town, obviously through their families and that. But
No, what a movie. And like I said, you know, it's, I actually, when I said last week when we were speaking about Halloween, and I do love Halloween, but I probably love The Fog even more. It's always just been a real hit with me, growing up watching it repeatedly. It's a great movie, and definitely in my top tier Carpenter movies.
yeah, I love it, man. For me, as well. Like my all-time favorite is definitely um, the Thing, which we're doing in a couple of weeks. My other favorite, I love what's his name, old Roddy Piper in that one, and
They
Escape from
live.
New York, and this, yeah, They Live, and The Fog. That's my 4. I mean, I like other Carpenter ones as well, but that's probably, if I pick my favorite ones, it'd be those particular 4.
And what's next on our list to cover? What's
Good
next week's
question.
JC?
Good question.
Oh yeah, Prince of Darkness, folks.
Yeah, I hope you
It's
hang on to your gold cross. You'll need that for next week.
yeah, it's classic Carpenter, but it's also somewhat different to what we've been covering so far. So no, I'm really looking forward to getting into this. It's one of my lesser watched
Feels almost
Carpenter
Clive
movies, but
Barker, the kind of tone of it.
yeah, no, it's a really fun watch. I haven't watched as much as other Carpenter movies, but
Yeah,
it's still a great watch. I'm
yeah. I'm
really
gonna
looking
rewatch it
forward to seeing
this week, so I'm fresh because I got see when I originally watched The Fog, would be going on 12, 15 years ago. I got a DVD combo that had 3 films. It had Prince of Darkness, The Fog, and one of the other ones. I can't remember what the third one was, but they're all Carpenter films. So I got it for like $10 or whatever, and that was the first time I'd like seen them.
well, Dr. Loomis himself, Donald Pleasance, will be back on our screens to, you know, help us get through the Prince of Darkness when we chat about
Yeah,
it next week. Yeah, looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
good time. Good
A
time
new
for us.
film,
Bad time for the people to film.
yeah, a new film from John Carpenter, master of terror and suspense.
Yeah, he is. Anytime you get one of those retrospective American horror documentaries, there's always like Wes Craven, Toby Hooper, John Carpenter, and the rest. It's like,
Yeah, going to be a good one, folks. Hope to see you all there for next week's show.
yeah, thanks for checking this out. If you get a moment, click the little thing, click things, watch things, enjoy them, and we'll catch you next time.